Hello, Internet, and welcome to the final installment of Daddy Sage's series on the Tom Dooley murder trial. Yeah, just slog through this, people, and you will finally be done with a 150-year-old murder case that none of you have ever heard about before we started this little shenanigan. Anyway, this might be the theory, called the theory portion of the thing, where Daddy Sage is basically giving out his theories on who actually committed the murder, since, well, in his opinion, and to a certain degree mine, Tom definitely actually didn't do it. So yeah, enjoy.
This is the final installment of this series about the Tom Dooley case. As usual, I used some drawings made by Mrs. Edith Carter, who had given me permission to use them before her death in 2014. Most of the pictures are my own, except for a few that I found on Wikimedia. This drawing is not Tom Dooley getting hanged. Actually, it's a hanging of Pirate Stede Bonnet back in 1718 in Charleston. When I use this picture, it's because it was exactly like the way Tom Dooley was hanged. The gallows was primitive. He was standing on a cart that was put away from beneath him. But back to the story. Tom Dooley was hanged for the murder of Laura Foster. But did he actually do it? He claimed to himself that he was innocent, and he kept on claiming that even at the gallows. He was convicted on circumstantial evidence only, and not too strong circumstantial evidence, as a matter of fact. The circumstantial evidence was based only on testimonies, and none of the witnesses testified anything about how the murder took place. At the gallows, Tom claimed that some of the witnesses had sworn falsely against him, and he named one, James Isbell, but unfortunately he didn't put name of the other ones. He insisted that James Isbell had committed perjury, which may be true or may not be true, we don't know and probably never will. Minutes after Tom was declared dead, one of his defense lawyers produced a written confession that Tom had made the night before, or at least so the lawyer said. Tom had made the lawyer promise that nothing would be disclosed until he was dead, but that doesn't make any reason. Why should he maintain his innocence if he knew that 5 minutes later his confession would be published? To me, that makes no sense, and I simply don't believe it. But let us take a closer look of what James Isbell could have committed perjury about. During trial, Colonel Isbell produced a map he had made from the area where the events took place, not a too good area filled with errors, distance mistakes, and so on. But it was probably the best he could do. Isbell couldn't have committed perjury about the map, as it was confirmed by many other witnesses that it actually was like that. He also testified about his participation in the search for Laura, and that he was present when the rope was found, when the blood spot on the ground was found, and finally that it was he and his father-in-law who finally found the place where Laura was buried. He finally told that he had assisted in employing assistance for the prosecution, but not out of any enmity to Tom, only for the good of the society. This is, as far as I can see, the only thing that he may have committed perjury about. But I will get back to that in a little while. Standing at the gallows, Tom told about the path and roads that leads to the place of the killing, but unfortunately we do not know what he actually said about it, except we can understand that he didn't go there. But why should James Isbell feel any enmity against Tom? Well, I have a theory, but I admit it's based purely on speculation. James's wife, Sarah Louise Isbell, was a second cousin of Tom's, and she was only a few years older than he was, just like it was the case with most of Tom's lovers. In April 1861, James joined the Southern Army, and 1 year later, in the spring of 1862, his wife had a daughter, Mary Virginia. It would have been rather difficult for James to be the father of this girl, as he hadn't been home for a year. Was it Tom? If he could walk to German Hill to visit Laura, he could also walk to Grandin to visit Sarah. Maybe it's not likely, but at least it's possible that Tom had an affair with his 5-year older cousin and became the father of her child. Maybe James had discovered who the father was and now wanted to get back at Tom. And maybe at Sarah as well. Some years later, when Sarah was pregnant with Robert Lee Isbell, another son of James's, James himself had another son with Eliza Anderson, one of the witnesses of the Dooley case. Maybe that was his way of getting revenge of Sarah. There's no doubt that Tom was a ladies' man, so to say. He had affairs with Ann Melton, Laura Foster, Caroline Barnes, Pauline Foster, and probably with others as well. Unconfirmed rumors in the area surrounding Elkville would know that Tom was the father of Ann Melton's oldest child, Martha Jane, not her husband, James Melton. If this is wrong or right, we will never know. The descendants of Anne claims it's wrong though. Anyway, why should Tom kill Laura? The prosecution claimed that she had given him the syphilis, and that was why he wanted to kill her. But I don't think it's likely. He had been with a lot of other women who could have given him the disease. So why kill just Laura? If the disease was not the reason, and he was just tired of her, there was still no reason to kill her. He could just have left her, and nobody would have cared about that. Some claims that Laura was pregnant, and that was why he couldn't just leave her, but had to kill her. But there's still no reason for that. Lots of women in that area brought up children who was sired by nameless fathers, or at least fathers who didn't marry the mothers. After Laura's disappearance, Tom had all the opportunity in the world to get away from the area, but he didn't. He stayed until someone began spreading rumors that he was responsible for Laura's disappearance. And only after a while did he go away to Tennessee. And before he left, he promised to return at Christmas time. To me, that doesn't sound like a man who was guilty in a murder. Besides from lack of motive, I also think that that Tom, as well as Anne and Pauline, didn't have the opportunity to commit the murder. So I don't think it was any of those. But if they didn't do it, then who did? Well, I'll get back to that in a little while. The prosecutor was very eager to prove that Tom was guilty of the crime. In his statements in court, he made a lot of everyday things look very suspicious. Things that Tom did both before and after the murder. It were things like going around in the area, visiting people in the area that he knew and had known all his life. That was certainly suspicious. Him going on the roads was suspicious. Tom meeting people, especially his friends, was certainly made suspicious. But most suspicious was it that Tom met with Ann Melton in secluded places when nobody else was around. And when somebody else was around, they spoke to each other in a whispering or low voice. To me, that sounded rather normal between lovers, especially when one of the lovers was a married woman, and maybe they didn't want everybody to know about their love affair. I think they were talking just about that, love or sex, not conspiring to commit murder. I will get back to the trial, or rather the trial and what Tom said at the gallows about people who lied. Unfortunately, he didn't mention any names, but he said that the lies were about his whereabouts in the days leading up to and after Laura's disappearance. Two of the witnesses, Cal Carlton and Hezekiah Kendall, testified about meeting Tom Friday morning before Laura's disappearance. They had nothing to lie about, but I have an idea that maybe they remembered the day wrong. So it was not on Friday they had met Tom. Celia Scott, who met Tom that Friday morning, it is confirmed by other witnesses, had nothing to lie about either, as all she said was that Tom had come to her cabin and asked if she knew where her brother Anderson was. This leaves only two witnesses, Lottie Foster, Ann Melton's mother, and Thomas Foster, her brother. They both testified about seeing Tom going to Bates Place, the place of the murder, several times on that Friday, even if other witnesses placed him elsewhere at the same time. But why should they lie? Maybe to protect someone like Anne, their sister and daughter. I ruled her out a moment ago, but they probably didn't know that she had not had the opportunity to commit any murder. And of course, they knew that she was jealous and hot-headed and a bit aggressive in her behavior. So maybe they simply thought that she did it. I don't think Tom visited Laura Friday morning. Therefore, Betsy Scott may have lied when she testified that Laura had told her that Tom had visited her this Friday morning. Or maybe Laura had lied to Betsy, so Betsy was telling the truth, but Laura had lied about Tom coming to see her. I think Tom got up that morning a bit sick from a night of heavy drinking with Anne and her mother, and simply went out to look for his friend George Washington Anderson. He followed the path next to Reedy Branch, and by that passed by Lottie Foster's house. That was when Thomas Foster saw him walking in direction of the Scott home, where he arrived a few minutes later. From the Scott home, he continued to the Melton home, where he found his drinking buddy of the night, Ann Melton, still in bed. They talked to each other for a while, about 15 minutes, and then Tom took off again. This time he went to Lottie Foster's house, where he got some milk, and then with the milk returned to his own home, and he stayed there for the rest of the day, except for 1 hour late in the afternoon, just while his mother was making supper, where he went to his own barn. So therefore, once again, Tom, Anne, and Pauline had no opportunity to kill Laura Foster, as their whereabouts were all accounted for, except for 1 hour when Tom was in the barn. But if none of the usual suspects actually killed Laura, then who did? Well, let me say that first of all, I do not think that the killing was premeditated. If you plan to kill someone with a knife, you must be very, very sure of your stabbing abilities if you decide to kill someone with only one stab to the chest. I think Laura was killed by accident, and I have a theory of how that went on. I'm certain that many Tom Dooley historians will oppose me in this theory, but I'll give it to you anyway. There's one man who had kind of a motive and a lot of opportunity, and he was never investigated, apparently. That man was Wilson Foster, Laura's own father. He testified that when he discovered that his horse was gone, he followed its tracks to Bates Place, where he lost it in an old field. After that, he walked to the Scotts to have breakfast there. But maybe, only maybe, he didn't lose the track. Maybe he actually found Laura and wanted his horse back, which she denied. She was still going to run away. Maybe not with Tom, but then with someone else we don't know about today. When Laura wouldn't surrender the horse, Wilson drew his knife and tried to cut loose the horse from the rope it was tied with to the tree. Laura tried to intervene, and accidentally Wilson stabbed her in the chest with the knife. Laura fell to the ground and Wilson, of course, tried to help his daughter. Unfortunately, it was too late. Laura was dying, and Wilson panicked. He ran away from the area and went to the Scots home. He couldn't possibly tell anyone that he had killed his daughter, so he acted like he didn't know anything about it. After having had breakfast, he went along his way, asking in several homes if anybody had seen Laura, but not actually searching for her. In the evening, when the Melton House party was over, he went to the place where he killed Laura, put her on the horse, and led her in the dark to the place where she was later found. He buried her in a hurry and led the horse back in the neighborhood of Bates Place and tied it to another tree, the tree where the robe was later found. Then he went to Francis Melton's place and stayed there for the rest of the night. The next morning he returned to his own home to find the horse there and understood that he had to do something to explain where Laura had gone when the horse was back. He therefore got people to search with him, and I think it's interesting that he didn't start any search on Friday, but only on Saturday afternoon. Unfortunately, this is pure speculation, but I think it might have went away like that. At least it's a possible solution. Maybe my speculations are far out, but I think it might have happened like that. Under any circumstances, I think that Tom was absolutely innocent. He didn't even know who killed Laura, and at least it wasn't him. I don't think he helped to bury her either, because he would only have done that if Anne had committed the crime, which I don't think she did. So I say that even, Tom, if your gravestone has been vandalized, I hope you will definitely rest in peace. If you want to know more about this case, you can read it on my homepage, grunsel.net/Tom_Dooley_the_legend.htm. I hope you have enjoyed this video and that you will visit my homepage. Thank you.
Well, that was it. The final installment of the Tom Dooley case. Possibly Daddy Sage will return with other stuff throughout the years, but nothing is planned for now. I generally hope you enjoyed this particular series, despite my snarky comments about it. It's always been something that has held my interest, and we have together and each spent quite a bit of time in the area actually seeking out old tombstones and so on. So at least I hope you found some interest in this particular matter. Until next time, I have been the Sage, and I wish you all a very happy day.